So here's my pushback, and it is, but my problem with I have a slight problem with the rivalry, is because the whole purpose of sports is to win national championships or to win championships, whether it be the NBA to win the NBA Finals, NFL to win the Super Bowl, baseball World Series, college football national championship. Like that's why you have all the donors at your schools, is to make sure that they're going to give you every resource that they possibly can to help you win a national championship. At Ohio State, Michigan, they tell you it's all about the rivalry game, all about the rivalry game. Now, it used to go hand in hand. You couldn't accomplish winning a national championship unless you won the rivalry game. But that's no longer the case. I remember there's a few years ago when Ohio State lost to Georgia in the college football playoff semifinal. They lose by 1. It was that shootout. It was a fantastic game. I mean, if Ohio State wins, they go on to bludgeon TCU the way that Georgia did. But that was my thinking. It was like, that's why I was so sick after the Georgia loss, because I'm like, watching what Georgia did to TCU, Ohio State would have done that. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes win a national championship. That season ends. Ryan Day does an interview not too long after that into the offseason. And they ask him about both of those losses. And one of the questions was, Ryan Day, which loss hurt more? And he goes, obviously, he still thinks about that Georgia loss, but he's still nauseous and is losing sleep over the loss to Michigan. And that's where I got pissed, because I'm like, stop it with that. That's ridiculous. You are paid to win national championships. And I know the game, the rivalry matters. But let's be clear. Everyone was mad that Ryan Day and Ohio State lost to Michigan that year. But you think we're as mad? You think people care as much if they hoist up a national championship trophy that year? You lost to Georgia by 1. You beat Georgia. You're national champions. You're beating TCU. It's not even up for debate. You're beating TCU. So to sit there and say that, well, it was a tough loss against Georgia, but I'm losing sleep over Michigan, that's ridiculous. You lost to Michigan. You didn't lose anything because you went to the playoff. You had a chance to play Georgia. You beat Georgia, who you lost to by 1. You're in the national championship game, and you win a national championship. This idea that Michigan is bigger than the national championship, that used to be the case because you couldn't accomplish one without the other. Now, even through all the years of Ohio State losing to Michigan, they have not missed the playoffs the last couple of years because they lost to Michigan. They've missed the playoffs the last couple of years because they had multiple losses throughout the regular season. You beat Georgia, you win a national title. That's why I don't like that talk anymore, is because when I think of Alabama, I think of national championships. When I think of Ohio State, I think about Michigan, and that's a problem to me. I'm going to lose that battle. I've fought it for years. I'm not saying the rivalry doesn't matter. Oh my gosh, it absolutely does. It's 100%, it's the biggest rivalry in sports. But I will never accept a program saying the rivalry means more than winning a national championship. That's my problem with it, because at the end of the day, I've had Jim Tressel on the show and others, and I've said, win a national championship and lose to Michigan in that same season, or beat Michigan and not win a national championship that season. Of course, they call him he's a politician for a reason. I don't even remember what answer he gave me, but he spun me in circles and never really answered it. It drove me nuts. But the easy answer is national championship. National championship, national championship, national championship. And if you're Ryan Day, you win a national championship. If you lose to Michigan on Saturday and win a national championship, all's forgiven. But you can't keep losing to Michigan and not having national championships. The national championship is the most important thing. That's what I want out of my teams. I'm not a Reds fan, I don't care about the World Series. If you could just win the NL Central, that'd be great. I'm a Browns fan. If you could just win the AFC North, I don't care about Super Bowls. That'd be great. Or forget that. As long as you beat the Steelers, who cares? Just beat the Steelers. I don't care what else happens. That's a loser mentality. I don't agree with that in this particular sense.
I think that's what makes the rivalry conversation so cut and dry for me when it comes to the Iron Bowl or the Red River rivalry with Texas and Oklahoma, or any of the great rivalries in sports. Every single one of those teams, you're absolutely right. You think of Alabama, you think of competing for national championships, not the rivalry game. You think of even Oklahoma and Texas. You think of competing for the playoff and not the rivalry game. When you think of Ohio State and you think of Michigan, you think of the rivalry game. And that's what makes it so distantly the best rivalry in sports, is because both of those teams wake up every single day and they don't think about winning a national championship. They don't think about holding the trophy at the end of the year. They think about beating their rival, and that's what makes it so great. And I think that's what makes it the best game of the year in any sport every single year, and that's why it gets the most views. And I think the fact that you can lose that game and still win a national championship is diminishing diminishing how much it means. And I don't like that. It makes me really upset to think about that, because you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of fans would be very happy if Ohio State won a national championship while losing to Michigan. I personally would not. If Ohio State won that national championship, beat Georgia and beat TCU, it would have a massive stain on it. And I wouldn't have enjoyed it nearly as much as if they win a national championship beating Michigan. Would I have gotten over it and celebrated a national championship? Absolutely. There's no question about that. But it would forever have an asterisk next to it because you didn't beat Michigan. I've said year after year my entire life, I'd rather go 1-11 than 11-1, and I'd rather beat Michigan and lose the rest of the games. That game means everything. And you heard Ryan Day yesterday. He said, I lost my father, and that's one of the hardest things me and my family have ever had to go through. Right up there with that is losing to Michigan in the last 3 years. This game is everything for the city, for the fans, for the coaches, for the players, and that's what makes it great. It's the best thing in sports, and that's what sets it apart. Does it make sense? No. You should be playing for a national championship every year. That should be the main thing that matters. But once that happens, Ohio State and Michigan becomes the Iron Bowl. It becomes the Red River Shootout. It becomes UNC Duke. Unless it's put on that higher pedestal where it's all that matters, it's just another rivalry. And then why do we even call it the game? Let's think of another name for it, because then it is just another rivalry. And you can get some of those cutesy names with the rivers and everything else. But this is the game. And it's the game because it's the only one that matters during the season. And that's why I'm so confident going into this year, is because we have a quarterback that understands that. Last year, Kyle McCord sat there in media availability for the season, and he said, it's just another game. We win, we win, we go to the playoffs, we play for a national championship. It's just another game. Kyle McCord didn't get it, and that was clear in Ann Arbor when we lost that game. Will Howard, ever since he stepped into this facility, he said only one thing matters, and that's beating Michigan for these seniors that chose to come back and get their first pair of gold pants. He gets it. Right after the Indiana game, he said it's Ohio State-Michigan week, and then immediately stopped himself to apologize to the media because he said Michigan, and he knows you don't say that in Columbus this week. This game is bigger than everything else, and if that stops being the case, it becomes another rivalry, and I think you lose part of what makes it so great.
I think this is the one exception. Kinner's right. Kinner's take is right with 99% of rivalries. I think it's if you win a national championship game, you can overlook the loss to your rival. This is the one where you can't really overlook the loss to your rival. A championship would probably make you feel good. I mean, it would make you. It would probably take away most of the loss of this, or most of the sting of that loss. But this is the one rivalry where, as somebody who has no dog in the fight, this is the one. This is appointment television for me as somebody who hates both of these teams. So I think it's the one game of the year that actually is. The rivalry is more important than the championship.
Mr. Mo makes a good point in the chat, and I don't really know who it backs up here, because you're right, national championships should be more important, but I think it just further proves how everyone operates with it. And when you talk about Urban Meyer and his time at Ohio State, I rarely hear national champion. I always hear 7-0 against Michigan. Like, everyone just unanimously puts that above. Even though he did win that national championship, that undefeated record against Michigan is bullet point 1.
7-0.
Right, and then you go to national champion. So, and maybe that's because Ohio State fans and Michigan fans have been brainwashed their whole lives into believing this is the biggest thing in the entire world. And I think that's what makes it great.
See, and I'm a bad person, because I hear Ryan Day say that, I lost my dad, that was horrible, and it is.
Oh, no, Ken.
But the second worst thing is losing to Michigan. I'm like, really?
Elliot thought the same thing this
morning.
Really? You thought the same thing when I said that this morning.
Yeah. What? Oh, you did what?
Yeah.
I did the same thing too.
Yeah.
I think we all did.
It was just kind of like, your life's pretty good then.
I did double down on -20 when he said that.
But that's the thing. Buckeye fans fall for that. Because I read it and I'm like, oh, come on. And then I see Buckeye fans like, oh, that Ryan Day, he's locked in. And I'm like, what? Man. Like, what are we doing? And that's the thing. And here's Urban's one of those guys, like, I believe it bleeds through Urban. I could feel it. Everything he says is believable. Yeah. Ryan Day, I'm not saying it's not believable, but maybe you need the resume to back it up, I guess.
I'm not going to say I don't believe it, because I can't, you see what's happening with.
I don't think he means, physically losing the game. I think a lot of the stuff that has transpired from that has probably been pretty hard to deal with living in Columbus.
Yeah.
Kirk Herbstreit
As
moved
Kirk
out of
Herbstreit,
Columbus
yeah.
because he got death threats.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't underestimate the Ohio State fans.
No,
I mean, Joe Klatt all of a sudden was
Yeah.
smooching the behind.
Oh, man, he loves the
you hear
Buckeyes
that?
now. Gus had some good calls against Indiana.
Yeah, those are like, well, we better start being nice to our. And we are the TV voice of the Buckeyes. We might as well start being nice to them.
They
Ohio
should just be the
State's been
TV voice of the Buckeyes. They don't call any other games.
Ohio State's been an objectively good program for the past 4 years, 3 years, and there's one knock. There's one knock, and that's that Ryan Day hasn't won. So
Yeah.
Because 85% of his games or whatever, it's a high win percentage.
He hasn't lost to a Big Ten team that's a real Big Ten team other than Michigan because Oregon's. When we start counting Oregon, as a Big Ten loss.
Oregon's
What
had a
have we
big-
lost?
Ryan
No,
Day's
it's
a
a
horrible
Big Ten
Pac-12 coach. He's 0-2. with
Right, he's
Pac-12,
two. Yeah,
whatever he is.
no, he struggles against Pac-12.
Well, he beat Utah, I guess.
Yeah, he did.
But no, like, and then I'll never say Duke, North Carolina is a bigger rivalry than that, but damn, that's at least when you look at it. And the Ohio State Michigan rivalry too is like it's a swing rivalry. Like it's a game. Michigan will win. They won 3 straight years. Ohio State won 7 straight years before that.
Ohio
And
State
technically,
won
Ohio State's been
16.
dominating for decades. But it's one of the. I'm looking at this Duke, North Carolina rundown right here. Since 1977, Duke, North Carolina has played 114 times. Duke has won 57 of those. North Carolina has won 57 of those. Duke, of the course of those 114 games, North Carolina has scored 8,900 points. Duke has scored 8,900 points.
Wow.
They've played in a national championship game. Like they're regulars in Final Fours and win national championships. Like that is to me, that is the most complete rivalry in sports. I think that is the most competitive, complete rivalry in sports.
I'm just glad Coach K went out with a win, beating UNC in the last time they played
I
each
know.
other.
He got that to go out like
Yeah,
that.
in the
That's-
Final Four too, to
Yeah.
beat UNC in your last game. That's incredible.